Here we are live at the 360 Vegas studios with this edition of School Talk. We have someone very special here. Sir, please introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do.
Officer Keith Habig with the Clark County School District Police Department, and I go around now and I teach a safe driving program to the students within the Clark County School District called Zero Teen Fatalities.
Okay, so explain to us, because you work for the Clark County School District Police. We established the fact every single show that the Clark County School District Police is not just a regular police department that most people think of. And they have all these different things that they do that are the centerpiece for the entire United States. And that there are other law enforcement agencies that would love to be able to do what they do. So explain to us what it is that you do and what it is that you teach.
So our big focus, again, is not necessarily just everything law enforcement side. It's community engagement, right? So if we can get out and we can talk to the students on a one-to-one basis, person to person, right? And I get out there and I can start talking about the safeties of driving. For example, the #1 cause of teen death in the U.S. is traffic-related crashes. So when I start bringing up some of the statistics and the kids go, I would have thought it was something else. But now we can have this discussion. We can sit down and why are we losing so many kids on our roadways? Whether it be, driving without a seatbelt, or, maybe you have too many passengers in the car and you're just distracted. So we can sit down and we can discuss with them on a more personal level.
So let's start off with death.
Yep.
Okay. Children or young adults are losing their lives because of certain choices and behavior.
Correct.
Okay. I want you to go down the list so that people understand. Because the thing is this. If we can scare one person right now, we've done our job.
Right.
Right? So go down the list of things that relate to a child or a young adult losing their life when it comes to automobiles. Because we would normally think it's drugs or this or that, and it's not.
Right.
So please go down the list of it and explain that.
A lot of it is going to come, first and foremost, from inexperience, right? The kids that are driving out there that are just turning 16, 17 years old, they haven't been driving for very long. So being inexperienced behind the wheel of a car, they're not going to know a lot of what's going on. Now, when we start talking about why are we losing, lives, #1, it is going to come down to seatbelts. Still, children and young adults that are not wearing their seatbelts are not secure in their vehicle. So even sometimes a small fender bender may end up causing them to hit their head or something like that. Again, the inexperience that we talk about, the distractions, their friends in the car. Having one person in their car, just one person, increases the chances of them getting into a crash by 50%. And it's crazy how fast it escalates. When you put 2 people, it goes up to 250%. And it's just because of distractions and, again, less experience. So these are those are 2 of the main ones that we always try to talk about.
We were growing up.
Yes.
Right? And we had to go through maybe a driver's ed, and then I remember when I had to get my license, we had a driving instructor, come around and show us, take us onto the back roads, and you know what I mean,
right.
and explain to us. But the thing is this: back then, it was just coming out, and it was seatbelts save lives, seatbelts save lives, click it, click it, click. You know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, whatever, right?
True.
I never wore my seatbelt.
True.
Okay. And then when I was driving my car and I went around on the 95 getting on the 15, and there was that boop boop like this.
Yes.
Okay. And I almost came out of the car. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Right. I wear my seatbelt everywhere I go now.
Right.
Okay. I also wear it because I now having so many friends that are on the police department, I realized also, as a matter of safety, but how they take it very offensively. Like when they pull someone over and that person isn't wearing the seatbelt.
Correct.
They're like, listen, it's not about the ticket, and please, you know what I mean? I'm not trying. It's about please, like we're out here and we're trying to save your life.
True.
And so those seatbelts are vital. And so it's so easy to get in the car and not click the seatbelt.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
But it's so important, right?
It is.
Like it really, really is.
It really is important. And we start talking, if you can go into even more statistics. We've done surveys, and people are 70% less likely to wear their seatbelt in the back seat of a car. Whether they feel more comfortable, they think
I never thought
they
of that.
think they feel safer. There's some people that get in and because in the front seat you hear the
wear
ding,
seatbelt
ding, ding, right? It tells you. So
Yeah.
you're like, oh crap, I have to put it on.
Right.
So you put it on, but in the back seat, you don't have some of those reminders. So people get comfortable. People will lay down in the back seat. And again, it's a comfort thing, right?
Yeah.
So by people doing this, and they actually are putting themselves at risk.
I never even thought of this.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
think about that. You're like, listen, you don't feel well, lay down in the back seat of the car, right? Like,
True.
we're driving home, and you're like, yeah, until some idiot cuts in front of you, and bang, and that's the end of the game.
Correct.
And now a simple, like you're saying, a simple fender bender, right, translates into something of
That could be major.
major. Okay. I have the same passion for you. I never thought about the seatbelt thing, but we always talk on a Trooper Talk about the seatbelts.
Yes.
Because we always pull up the statistics of how many people in the crosswalks that have passed away,
Okay.
right? And then how many people because of seatbelts, right? And then our number one thing is speed and impairment.
Speed
right?
impairment. And now distractions.
And now distraction.
Correct.
And so, it's really easy to look down at the radio or to look at a cell phone or whatever, much different than 25 years ago when you just had a radio and you were like, okay, tune to this station and drive down the road.
Correct. But now everything is, like screens and,
Yes.
and things like that. So you get more distracted by looking at the screen as opposed to just, maybe clicking a button that automatically shoots over to, a station.
Yeah, 100%.
Correct.
Now, when it comes to, again, teens, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, at that age, they are sort of at the experimental age of many things in their life.
True.
Right? One of them, depending on the person and all this type of stuff, is drugs and alcohol. And those things, when you take that for an inexperienced person, and then you take that and you put that behind the wheel,
Correct.
it's just absolutely catastrophe.
It is.
And so one of the things that I would like to talk about is this. We are coming now to the end of the school year for this year. We want to ensure that all students that want to come back, right, they're able to.
Correct.
And so we don't want to lose anybody this summer to something so silly as impairment or inexperience behind the wheel. Let's talk about that.
Or another one that I actually talk about a
Yeah.
lot is a lot of times kids during the summer, they're going to go out and they're going to blow off steam. We were all kids once too.
Yeah.
We just had a situation, I think it was just last night, maybe it was the night before. Young man, 18 years old, he's out, he's being foolish, and he's trying to show off in his car. He goes into a park and he starts doing donuts in the park, right? Because he's blowing off steam, and these are things that kids might think are fun. But they're damaging property and they're doing other things, but they're also bringing other dangerous situations in. Whether they, again, we talk about the inexperience. they might lose control of the car. They might hit somebody, maybe that was playing in the park or something like that. And these are extremely dangerous situations. Kids might think they're out there trying to have fun, but we really need to start focusing on how dangerous is some of this fun that we're having. And I think, unfortunately, we do lose lives with kids doing that as well.
Yeah, and when you said that, my biggest thing that I was thinking about is, like street racing.
Correct.
Right.
That too.
And,
yep, that's out there too.
And I think I did see something about the park.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so, we have to realize that we were all young and we all did silly things.
Correct.
You know what I mean? We all, rode a skateboard and fell down and thought it was the worst thing in the world, and you were all scarred up or what? You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
right. And so these type of activities, we've all done. And
correct.
The difference is that in your line of work, I never had the internet. Like, computers first came out, right? And
yes.
so it wasn't like, somebody was bad and then they filmed it and then they put it on the computer and then they ruined somebody's life.
Right. Yeah. We didn't have any of that.
You know.
And that's another thing that because I think the internet a lot of times glorifies, falsely glorifies things.
Course.
So they're out there and they don't realize, they think they're having fun, but they're actually committing crimes. And like you said, they're videotaping them and posting these things that they do online. I mean, they're posting their crimes.
Yeah, no.
So, and again, we've got to find a way to get, a little bit more productivity out of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So.
All right, you ready for some pictures?
Pictures?
Yeah, you ready? Look at this.
Okay.
Who's that guy? All right. Lieutenant Campbell.
Yes.
We love him.
Definitely.
He brought his motorcycle on. We did the videoing. You know what I mean? All that type of stuff.
Yes.
We met. You did the picture at the Charleston Boulevard.
Yes.
You do funny things, but you do funny things to capture people's attentions because they are doing foolish activities.
Correct.
So, aside from the teaching,
okay,
one of the things that's very important is school safety when it comes to speeding.
Yes.
And people do not stop at the stop walks.
No.
And they don't care if you're in a chicken suit or a lime green thing.
A leprechaun, yeah.
A leprechaun, right? They're blasting past you you know what I mean?
They are.
And when Johnny and I were there, okay,
yes.
It was the most amazing thing ever because they have you walking across. They have Lieutenant Campbell over here with the radio. They have 10 cop motorcycles up the road, like lined like this, right? So any human that can see up the road is like, okay, there must be something wrong here, right?
Correct.
But they don't care.
They don't slow down. No.
They don't slow down.
And it's habitual. I mean, they're in such a mode, such a habit of, okay, the speed limit says 45, but I can go 55, or, there's people out there that are just, I'm always in a hurry. When we talk about, focusing on other things that are around you, you're not the only person on the road. One of our big things that I like to talk to the kids about is act like you're invisible. When you're out there, if you're walking, if you're riding your bike, if you act like you're invisible and nobody sees you, you would actually be surprised how many people really don't see you. But you can see a lot more of everything else.
Yeah.
And you can be more alert.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to
good.
say that, that comes back to our earlier conversation. That when you don't have the experience on the road, you're not as comfortable. And again, we could probably have the conversation. Well, listen, the people that are really comfortable, they're the ones you got to look out for, right?
You
'Cause
do.
They're the ones
Yes.
that are blasting down
Correct.
the road, right? Because they're like, woo,
Right.
I'm not 18 anymore, right? And so we can have a conversation about both.
We could.
But when it comes to the inexperience of someone who is just now getting their license, they probably don't own their own car.
Correct.
So
The majority, correct.
Right. And so they feel like Like I remember like driving around in my mom and dad. You know what I mean? Like
Same
you
way.
feel like, oh man, I better. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you park away from everybody.
You want to make sure you don't ding mommy or daddy's car.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
But then you have, on the opposite side, some of those kids that they are fortunate enough to where they can get their own car, and it's almost comes to like a show off type of thing, right? They think they're the cool kid. Oh, I can do this. I can do that. Watch what I can do. And unfortunately, this brings dangerous situations in as well.
So let's get into now the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay. There are things in your line of business that you have to prepare for the end of the year. So do you hold special end of the year things like, in an auditorium for kids, like for you on a personal level that just says, look, I'm your instructor, please just, follow what I'm doing, talk to us a little bit about that.
On my end, it's kind of hard to do that. I do mention some things like that as we start approaching the end of the school year. But a lot of the schools, it's hard for me to get my program into the schools the last 2 weeks of the school year because students they're preparing for their finals and classes are trying to button up all of that. So when I am in there like the month prior, yes, I am definitely talking to them, hey guys, we have, the end of the year is coming up. We need to be smart. We need to make sure that we're making good decisions this summer. And we do talk about it all the time, yes. Yeah. I try to hit the schools. I've been scheduling the last 2 years around their events. For example, you might hit, say, a legacy high school right before their homecoming in September. But then I'm lucky I can do Arborview after that in October. Or we can do Foothill, later on, because they stagger their homecomings. So if I can do right before their homecomings, because sometimes we have issues before homecomings and proms, so I like to do them before those events as well.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yep.
And now let me ask you, if there's parents that now watch, because we air this on Channel 13. Okay. Sometimes parents are unaware of what is going on. We learned last week, about the, different types of things that people do, in the schools of tagging and, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
That I wasn't aware of. I wouldn't know, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so what thoughts do you have for parents now at the end of the school year, if you could talk to them and say, these are things to maybe look out for and things like that? What would be your thoughts on that?
One of my biggest things is pay attention. Pay attention to your kids and ask them questions. If you need to go through their phone, right? Find out some of the things that they're doing. A lot of these kids are videotaping the foolish things that they're doing. Go look through their photos and talk to your kids. Me and my wife, we talk to our kids all the time about the things that they're doing. We try to follow them. They can follow us. We have an app out there. There's an app called Life 360. They can see where I'm at any given time. Just look it up and go, hey, Dad's over here. Let them know that they can look me up just like I can look them up. So these are some of the things that we can do. When it comes to driving, that's the hard one because you don't really know how you can watch, your kid. There's a lot of things out there. We're talking because I've got a kid that's getting ready to drive.
So what do you tell him?
So we're trying to watch him. And, and it's funny because a lot of the videos that I show are dash cam videos. My wife and I have been talking about getting a dash cam for him, so that we can kind of see, we can check up on him. Hey, just so you know, we're going to see who's in your car. We're going to see what you're doing down the street. But it's not just necessarily to watch. It could be to watch other people. Because if he gets into a crash and the dash cam would show maybe who's at fault, it might not be his fault. So these are some just some options, some things that they can do to try to keep an eye on their kids a little more.
And the cool thing is that just as you're laughing and joking about this, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not saying, well, listen, I'm trying to invade your space. It's like, listen, let me just share with you that I'm being a concerned parent.
Correct.
And one day when you're a parent, you'll go, oh, yeah, I remember that, right? But it's the truth, right?
It is.
You're just trying to say, look, I just, in today's world, things can happen very
Things
quickly.
can happen very quick. Life is too short, and we need to make sure that we're there for the long haul, right? Man, check up on them, talk to them all the time. Like I said, I let my kids check up on me. We're going through the exact same thing. I do the exact same things with them that I recommend to other people, and it may not be for everybody, but I think paying more attention and talking to your kids is definitely a great thing.
Yeah, and it's very important.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
And so
Build that relationship and that rapport, yeah, and have it to where you guys can talk about anything.
yeah, we need to have great members of society,
Correct.
and that's why we care so much about the kids.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And working for the Clark County School District Police and working for the chief and the lieutenants and the captains, it's what the mission is and the goal is there.
Most definitely.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you was, you lost an officer this year.
We did.
What was this like for you, and have you changed what you do because of this?
I don't know if I've changed a whole lot. I mean, one of our big things that we do talk about, because again, life is too short and you don't know how long you're going to be here. It was extremely sudden. I knew him a little bit, not a whole lot, but I knew him enough to know, great guy. And, when you lose somebody that, makes a connection within the community, at the schools that he was with, he's definitely going to be deeply missed. So sometimes you might try to go, you know what, he did this. Let me go ahead and try to kind of live his legacy out and do some of the things that he was doing to reach out to, to the students in positive ways.
Yeah, because the thing is that what's really cool with the Clark County School District Police is that generally speaking, you're not knowing somebody for 5 minutes for
Right.
an interaction or whatever. You might know somebody, and then we found out you might know somebody's the kids of the kids that are
Correct.
coming there. You know what I mean? And
Most
you're like,
definitely.
oh, I knew your father when he was 16. You know what I mean? You're like, am I really that old now? You know what I mean? Like,
Unfortunately, we are getting, that old, right? I mean, we have officers that have been on, this department for 25 to 30 years. There's no doubt in my mind that they have kids that are coming up from kids that they saw, when they, and again, if we can just build that rapport, it can only get stronger.
it's very important. And that's one of the things that the Clark County School District Police does that no one else does, is that they start off with a child and end up into a young adult. And that's why we have to talk to them specifically about the teaching of what you do, because that teaching is going to be what's going to prepare them for their life. Yeah? All right, I got this one. You ready? What do we have over here? I see all these kids over here with monitors and everything.
So we did this over at Desert Oasis High School, and we had approximately 350 students. And we brought them into the auxiliary gym so that we could show them this presentation. My presentation's about an hour to an hour and a half. We've got a couple video screens that are up there you can see over there on the right. And we show them some videos of some people that were foolish behind the wheel of a car or not wearing their seatbelt. And unfortunately, some of those individuals have lost their lives. And our goal is, some of it is a little bit of a shock value. If you see a crash and somebody goes flying out of their car like 150 feet, it's a shock value. But if it opens up the eyes of the kids, to where they're like, I think I'm going to start wearing my seatbelt, then that's a bonus, right? That is our whole goal. So we'll show them some videos like that. We'll show them videos of drunk people all over the road. And again, one of the things that students don't realize, because a lot of students will be like, but Officer Habig, I don't drink. That's awesome. And I'm like, but you do drugs. I don't do any drugs. And I'm like, hold on. Do you take ibuprofen, Tylenol, NyQuil? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I take those. They're still drugs. They're over the counter. But you need to realize what they do to you. Students don't realize, I would probably say 90 to 95% of the students don't realize that there's 10% alcohol in NyQuil. And they're like, so I can't drive if I take NyQuil? No, you can't, right? Over-the-counter drugs, even though they're legal, they can still impair your driving. And these are all the things that we hit and we try to touch base with while we're doing our presentations.
And so you do things with not just you do things with the charter schools,
We do.
and you also there's a program that you participate in that I understand is very gruesome.
Metro used to do it right up until COVID, and then a lot of things changed, as everything has. But Henderson still does it. They do a program out there. It's called Every 15 Minutes. So what they do is they will go to 2 schools a year. They do one in the fall and one in the spring. And what the program is you will get all of the juniors and seniors out of the school, and they put them into bleachers. And there will be a crash scene set up on the street. And let's say you have 6 cars on the street. You will have, it's like an actual crash scene. So they'll play 911 calls from an actual crash that occurred. So the students hear all the frantic 911 calls. Police will start to show up. They will start calling ambulances. Ambulances start to show up. Paramedics, fire engines start showing up. And they go through the scene as if it were a real live scene. Usually what happens is you will have one individual that plays a drunk driver who caused the crash. You will have a couple individuals in another car that are mortally wounded, so that they're not with us anymore. And what they do is sometimes, so they'll grab the students. If they have to go to the hospital, they'll put them in an ambulance and they'll take them to the hospital. Meanwhile, they are filming this the whole entire time. They're filming every single process, whether it's dealing with the drunk individual, the individuals that died on scene, that they have to go to the morgue. They have the parents that have to come to the morgue and identify their child. I actually have a friend of mine who had his daughter act as one of the deceased. They had to write a obituary for their child. He said it was the hardest thing he's ever had to do in his life.
Oh my God.
It is a full-blown detail, and they show you every single aspect. So what they do is, at that point in time, all of the students that were involved in the scene, the actors, right? They end up going to a hotel, and that's when I come in, and then I will present my program to them, and they have other guest speakers. They will have doctors, they have morticians that come in and talk to the students, so that we can just raise more awareness to them. And then the second day at school, all of their seats in all of their classes have a white sheet over it that says that those students aren't with them anymore. They walk them through the halls as, dead, with a grim reaper walking through the hall, and all of the students will see this because the students are no longer with you. And then they will take them into into the gym, and they will show the entire presentation on a video screen to all of the kids that witnessed the crash scene, juniors and seniors. And it really, really hits home. You see the parent, this is what it would look like if your mom goes to the morgue to identify your body. They're crying. It really, really hits home. It is a tremendous, tremendous program. It's called Every 15 Minutes.
I don't even know what to say. Okay, you know what I mean? Like literally, what you like. As an older man, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't imagine. And it almost leaves you like speechless.
It really, really does. And I'm telling you, for those that are involved, that participate in it, every single one of them, when I talk to them, I give them my presentation, but they get to ask me questions at the end, and they're like, I never knew it entailed this much. So if we can hit home, and it's usually between 20 to 30 kids that participate in the crash scene and everything like that. So it is a smaller group, but it's the larger group, the juniors and seniors that watch the whole thing as outsiders, that hopefully we can hit home. I would love to say 75 to 80%. If we could get that high of a reaction rate, would be great, even though it might be lower at anywhere from 30 to 50 maybe. But It's still, you know, if it hits home with 50, then we're still pretty good, 50%.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, this is very scary.
Correct.
Like, but the difference is you're talking about real
But it's
stuff,
real life, real scenarios.
and that people need to understand that by doing certain things, you have the possibility of not being on the planet anymore.
Correct.
And therefore, you're not going to a college, you're not having family, you're not living the rest of your life, because you're not going to be here. And so it's very, very important. And so with your teaching and you going out and doing all these things, it's so important.
It is.
You know what I mean? And,
Yes.
and so, you know, I love the fact of the Clark County School District Police, how they have the social workers.
Yes.
Because I never really understood the fact of the bridging of the gap between a law enforcement and a person who just needs help, right? And so it was really informative. It was really cool. And for you, one of the things that I don't think people realize is that you have this immense amount of knowledge when it comes to explaining to someone. And again, you have to explain it in a way to a younger adult.
Correct.
But, you know, you have to hammer that home.
We do.
And so it comes from there. And then secondarily, it comes from if they have a home that is a loving home and things like that, to share it in you know, to just keep reinforcing your message.
Correct. And every now and then, you know, it's funny. You know, every now and then I'll get, you know, a student that's like, they'll raise their hand. So if my mom doesn't wear her seatbelt, how can I get her to start wearing her seatbelt? I'm like, that's a really good question, because you probably have somebody that's been driving for 20 to 30 years that thinks they know everything, right? They're comfortable, and they think that they're experienced enough. So I, you know, would talk to them like, you know what? Get on YouTube. Look at some of these crashes. Some of these crashes I pull right off of YouTube. Like, you can see them, you know, crash without seatbelt, and show them and let them know you're concerned. You know, tell them that you are as concerned for them as they are for you when you are going out, and you don't want to lose them. And see if you can try, you know, to maybe start changing their minds.
Yeah, because it's very important. You know what I mean? Like, and again, we have to start with one child and then build upon two children and stuff like that. It is very important. And you know what's very interesting is that I don't know the amount of people, but because generally speaking, when a child comes to school, they're out of the car seat.
Right.
Right. They're like, you know, they're able to freely be in a car, right? That how many of them don't wear the seatbelt in the back seat?
Right. There's a lot of
like,
them.
I had never thought about that. Like, I mean, I have a seatbelt there, but who
Right.
puts it on? You're in the back seat of the car.
Right. And we ask that question all the time, you know, who's ever forgotten to wear a seatbelt? And you'll get, you know, and there's probably a lot of kids that are like, well, I'm not going to raise my hand,
Right.
which is fine. But we get kids that raise their hand. I'm like, okay, let me ask you a question. I go, and I'm not trying to point you out. I said, but why would you not wear your seatbelt? Like, just give me a reason. And we hear most of the common things. I forget. I'm a little lazy. It's not very comfortable. We have heard, well, I'm safer in the back. And then when we show them videos, they're like, maybe I'm not safer in the back. But every now and then you get one that shocks you. We had a kid, he raised it. He goes, well, my dad took all the seatbelts out of my car. And I almost don't know how to answer that. Like, I'm like, did you just say what I think? He took your seatbelts out of the car? And he's like, well, we're fixing up an old car. I go, I understand that. I go, but you got to put them back in. Like, is he looking to put better ones in? And he goes, no, he just doesn't have them. And again, I'm confused, right? Like, well, he needs to put them in. Yeah, it is it is the law, right? You got to have them on. I said, but you guys really need to start being safe. So I'm really hoping that he was able to go home and tell his dad, you know, maybe we should put some seatbelts in here. But that was a shocker to me.
Yeah. And so, when you do your planning for, let's say, next year,
Yes.
right? So, do you hit like most of the schools and most of the charter schools, and then I know you work with some, the hospitals and stuff like this. Explain to us.
So,
this.
like, I don't have anything like set in stone.
Uh-huh.
So for me to go and get into the high schools, I have to go and meet with the administrative staff. I'll try to meet with a principal or an assistant principal, and I'll try to set up the program. I love speaking to seniors because those are the ones that are typically mostly driving. And I'll set it up and I'm like, okay, this is what we want to do. We're going to come talk to your government classes, and I'll be here for 2 days. And then I'll go and I'll set, I'm like, okay, I'll schedule you for, let's say, September 23rd and 24th. But then I'll get a call or I'll get an email. Hey, Officer Habig, we know you're doing these great things. We have a program. For example, one of the charter schools, they do a program through Sunrise Hospital called You Drink, You Drive, You Lose. And it's about bringing the awareness to, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And so we'll partner up with different, they'll have paramedics will come, they'll set up a table, they'll have an ambulance there so that the kids can go in and look at the ambulance. I will set up a table or a booth. Sometimes we have these they're big tricycles that grown-ups can use. But what we do is we have impairment goggles that make you feel as though you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And then we try to get them to drive around cones. And we make a joke about it, just because we're trying to raise the awareness. If you hit a cone, it's like you hit a kid, right? And they're like, oh, I got to be careful. And some of them will just plow over a cone, or some of them will hit, the little corner of the cone. You're like, oh, you took off a toe, and they're like, like, this is really hard. That's the whole point, right? And this is why we don't want you to drive under the influence of drugs or alcohol, because you can't see exactly where that cone is. Maybe it's a curb, maybe it's a pole, but maybe it is a kid, or a person in real life. So we want to make sure and we raise the awareness. So that's a really good, but they reach out to me. Some of the hospitals, Sunrise Hospital, we had another one. There's been a couple of different hospitals that we go to, and they'll do that same thing. So we'll bring the goggles. Depends on how much space we have. If we don't have a lot of space, sometimes we have these cornhole boards that we use as accuracy activity devices. Oh. Again, if you put the goggles on and kids are trying to play cornhole and they're throwing these things 30, 40 feet because they don't have any depth perception. Mm-hmm. And I'll put goggles on and I'm like, okay, now here's put the blocks in, and they're like, and you can see them, they're trying to get farther away, and they'll pick up, and then they get really close. What shape is that? Is that a triangle? And I'm like, if you felt like that, would you get behind the wheel of a car? And they're like, no, sir. I'm like, thank you. We're raising the awareness.
Yeah, and that's what's important.
It is.
And so the reason that you do this is because you care.
100%.
You know what I mean?
I'm very passionate about driver safety, passenger safety. It is unfortunate throughout my time within the school district. I've been officer for 16 years, and unfortunately, I have had four young individuals at the schools that I have been at that unfortunately have lost their lives to traffic incidents, and none of them are ever good. So I'm very passionate about it, and I just want to raise as much awareness so that these numbers can start coming down.
And you speak from personal experience.
Yes.
And so that's what's important. You're not just somebody that's just sitting there talking and stuff like this. You not only live it with your own personal family, mm-hmm. right?
Yes.
But when it comes to the schools, you've unfortunately had to relive, something that is a tragedy that every one of these students, mm-hmm. every one of these students should never have to go through in their
right.
life.
And I don't want to, and I tell all of them, I don't want to be up there talking about any one of them. I relive it every single time because I have a portion of two of those students. And So I relive the incident every single time I do the program.
Does it make you tear up? Do you get like?
Sometimes, yeah.
I can see it now,
yeah,
right?
yeah, sometimes it does.
Right.
Because again, you meet some of these kids, and they're good kids.
Good,
You know,
right?
There are, good kids, and I don't want anything to happen to any of them.
Yeah, and that's what's so important. And again, I come back to the fact of that's one of the things that the Clark County School District Police does that no other agency does, which is these type of activities to go out there and try to protect the children.
Correct.
And as well provide this information to the parents, because we have to let the parents know of what's going on in the schools, so that we can make sure that over this over the summer months that everyone is coming back.
It's coming back, right? We are all in this together, right?
Yeah.
We all have to do our part. If we can all do a little bit, right, then we can start lowering these numbers.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. One of the things that I wanted to touch on was that you do a thing at the Motor Speedway.
Yes.
I want to touch on a few different things, but generally speaking, we live in a world of technology. So if somebody gets a flat tire or something of this nature, they have AAA or they can make a phone call, but there's sometimes that you're not able to do those type of things.
Correct.
And so most cars come with a spare tire, they come with a jack, they come with all these type of things. Changing the battery, like these type of simpler activities. This is something that you touch on as well. Explain that to us.
So we do. There's a couple of different programs that I do. So the program you're talking about, where we do it out at the Speedway, is called Driver's Edge. It is a free program to driving age students from 15 and a half to 21 years old. All they have to have is either a permit or a driver's license, and then you got to be able to get in. That's the hard part, because we only allow so many people in when we do these events. We do 4 events a year. We'll do 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring out at the Speedway, and we show them there's 4 different things that we go through. One of the programs, they'll sit in my program and I talk to them for 40 minutes. But we have another one where we show them about their car and how to get the most out of your car, right? How do you pay attention to make sure that the battery is good, to make sure that the car is not running too hot? We'll get them underneath the hood and we'll show them a few basic things. How do you, charge a dead battery? How do you hook it up? A lot of these kids don't know. We will talk about, how do you change a spare tire? Where are all of your tools for it? Some cars have it underneath the seat. Some cars have it in the trunk. Learn your vehicle. Whenever you get a vehicle, learn where your things are. You can always look at the manual and you can find out things there. So we try to teach them all of that. We'll do that at the Speedway. There are 2 driving portions within that. There's one where they put them into a skid. They'll wet down the ground. They'll have them, it's funny. They'll ask the kid, they're like, how long you been driving? Oh, I got my permit on Wednesday. Awesome, floor it. And the kid goes driving, and then they pull the emergency brake, and the kid goes into a skid. And they teach the kid, these are with professional race car drivers, and they teach them very calmly, how do you get out of a skid? And they'll show them a couple of different times. We do another emergency lane change maneuver. Same thing, floor it, now you have to turn right, now you have to turn left. And you can understand, how can you control the car? What happens if you slam on the brakes and you have anti-lock brakes? Can you still steer? And they'll show them these things, That Driver's Edge program is a phenomenal program. Again, it's run 2 times a year. People can get online at driversedge.org.com. Go to try driversedge.com and get on the notification list, and it'll tell you when the next class is coming available and when you can sign up. And try to sign up. It fills up within minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Normally, like every single session that we have, we do it here in Vegas, like I said, 4 times a year. It's on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's a 4-hour session. We do 2 a day, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, each of those 3 days. And we will still have a waiting list between 700 to 800 people. waiting to get into the program.
It's important stuff to
It
learn.
really,
you know
really
what I mean?
is.
Like so that someone needs to know.
Correct.
I mean, people need to understand that these type of activities are very important when
Correct.
you drive the car, so that you know the car, so you're not stuck out in the middle of Las Vegas temperature at 130 degrees with no water.
No, 100%.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. And see, that's the other thing. So we do a program called Cops and Cars. And sometimes I'll go to some of the schools, like if a school has a driver's ed program, which I want to say there's only like 7 schools in our valley that have driver's ed programs out of 36, which I really would like to see it, increase. But I'll go out there and I'll talk to those teachers and I'm like, well, why don't we do a Cops and Cars event? And they're like, well, what is that? Instead of just sitting in front of a screen and me showing them all these, I actually get them in front of a car and I show them, like I said, the things that we talk about at Driver's Edge, how to get the most out of your car. But then we go down a checklist. What are things that you should have in your vehicle in case of an emergency? Water, blankets. I understand that we're in Vegas, it's a desert, but what if it's during the wintertime, right? What if it's cold outside? Always have a blanket, have a flashlight. Make sure that the batteries work in your flashlight, because the last thing you want to do is go,
They don't have to crank one anymore.
I have a flashlight. I can just click, 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 click. So make sure that your batteries are working. And we show them how to get the most out of their car. I've had some church youth groups that have reached out to us that, just found us through Driver's Edge, or maybe a kid at a high school was like, hey, there was this guy that does this thing, and I'll hand out my cards all the time. And can you come to our church on a Saturday or a Sunday? We do our boys youth group, which is from 16 to 18 years old, once a month. Can you come during one of those? I'm like, most definitely. We'll show them how to get the most out of the car. And then I'll show them, what do you do in case you get pulled over, right? And they're like, well, I don't know what to do. Well, number one, we need to make sure everybody knows when you get pulled over, roll down your windows, right? Officers want to see inside the car, not because we're nosy, because we want to be safe. We have seen as many stories, heard as many stories, seen the videos of officers that are getting shot at through dark tinted windows, that it's scary walking up to a car with dark tinted windows. We don't know what's going to happen. The person in the driver's seat could be the kindest, best person in the world, but we don't know if they happen to be a serial. We don't know what's going on. So roll down all of your windows. Stay calm. That's another one. A lot of times when you pull kids over, they're freaking out. They want to call mommy or daddy, and I'm like, now is not the time. Stay relaxed, and we'll talk about it. Give us your information. Have it readily available. If you're digging through your car, you're only going to become more stressed. And the officer will be more stressed if they see you reaching into nooks and crannies that they don't know what's in there. So stay calm. Have all of your stuff readily available, and we'll get through it, and we'll talk together. So.
And so what I was going to say was, for a child or a young adult.
Yes.
Okay. So if they have their own car.
Yes.
They need to make sure that their license, registration, and insurance card or insurance on the phone, they have, and they know exactly where it is at all times.
Exactly where it is.
Just in case.
Correct.
Right? Like, maybe you get in an accident, who knows, right?
Correct.
And if they are in the parent's car, either mom or dad or aunts, uncle, whatever, right?
Yes.
Before they take control, because let's talk about this, okay? One of the programs I watch, on the TV where they follow the police on Friday and Saturday nights and stuff like this, right?
Yes.
They always talk about control. So the person who is driving the car is in control and possession of that car.
Correct.
That means that they are responsible for what is in that car and everything like that.
Everything.
And so if it's not their car, they need to make sure that they have all the paperwork
that they
for
know
the
where
car,
everything is
right?
at. And again, readily available. Right?
Readily available.
As parents. And again, I have a kid. He's just getting ready to drive. He has his permit now. And we have shown, look, If you get pulled, this is what you need. You open up your center, and it's right there. It's in a handy dandy,
I think they
little
give you
packet.
the little thing.
They do, right? The insurance company gives you that little clear packet.
Right.
It has the registration and insurance right there.
Right there.
Right there. Readily available. He needs to make sure he has his permit or license on him at all times. And that's another one, because a lot of times you'll get, oh, well, I left it at home. Okay, so you're driving illegally because you have to have your license.
Explain that. Go into a little bit of detail on that.
So, again, if you pull somebody over and they don't have their license on you, you can actually receive a citation for not having your license in your possession while you are driving and in control of that vehicle. Even though you have one, okay? Yes, somebody will probably, take that ticket, they'll go to court, and they'll throw it out because they're like, okay, you
obviously have one.
Obviously you have it. So it's kind of like an inconvenience thing, right? You have to have it in your possession, right? Because when we start talking about it, again, you get into that what if moment, right? What if something bad happens? What if you get in that crash? Well, now we can't identify you because you don't have your driver's license on you, right? Maybe it's not a fatality, but maybe you're in the hospital and you can't, maybe you got hit so hard in the head that you have amnesia. Now you can't remember who you are, right? So it's to me, it's kind of common sense. Always carry your license on you at all times.
Always carry the license. And the other thing, too, is that we touched on the fact of the cars, right, and trucks or whatever, right? That everything is digital and, and all this type of spiel, right? But the state law, and correct me, so let's talk about this, right, is that you are not allowed to be on your phone physically in your hand.
Correct.
If the phone is on a mount on the dash and you are clicking the button like a radio, it is totally different than you physically having the phone in your hand and pressing the button.
Correct.
And so that's the one that you will receive a citation for. You could, right?
You could,
but
yes.
You should not be on your phone.
Should not be in your hand.
At
Correct.
all while you're in that vehicle.
At all while you're driving. Again, if it's on a mount, you can, touch the buttons and you can do all of that on the mount. Understand it is still a distraction, right?
No, that's what I was going to get to the next point.
And I talk about that with the kids all the time.
Right.
But you cannot have it physically in your hand. Physically in your hand. If it is physically in your hand, you can be pulled over and you can receive a citation for that.
And if I'm not mistaken, we just filmed the thing on the Trooper Talk. Like May is Distracted Driving Month.
Okay.
And so let's talk about the children and the young adults when it comes to the distracted driving, okay? Mm-hmm. I'd like you to, again, so people understand, go over those numbers again. That if you have one person or you have two people, explain, like, what that means. That if you have somebody over here and they're like, oh, what do you think of this song? And you're like, oh, this song? And you're like, bang, that's all it takes.
No, it really, really is. So when we start talking about the numbers and what we talk about with the kids, right, is putting one person in your car, one passenger, right, can increase the chances of you getting into a crash by 50%. Anytime you're on the road, there's always going to be a chance that you can get into a crash or something like that, right? But when you add a distraction to it, now you go from a level that's right here, now you're going up 50%, right, to possibly get into a crash. Well, if you add a second person, and again, this is for young adults, if you add that second person, it jumps all the way up to 250%. You're almost 2.5 times more likely to get into a crash with two people in your car than you are with nobody. So, and again, it's because of that thing. We start talking about, you're talking to your friends, you're having a conversation, which is
like this,
which is nice and normal, right? And you want to be that person that's like, well, I'm personable. I want to look at you while I'm talking to you, so I'm going to look at you while I'm talking. But now what are you doing to the road? And you're not seeing some of the things that are happening in front of you, and we're just increasing our chances. So we have to avoid those distractions. And as passengers, respect the fact that they're driving. Don't be that passenger that says, "Oh, look, that cat's wearing a hat."
Right? What do
you know what I
think?
mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't. Right now I don't care. Right? Did you see what Johnny said? Johnny said, "Wait, what?" No. So, these are things we all need to work together, right? As passengers, as drivers, talk to your passengers. Hey guys, do me a favor. I'm driving. Let me kind of concentrate on that.
Yeah.
We can I'll talk. I can talk, right? But if you're inexperienced and you've only been driving for 6 months to a year, you're inexperienced. Try to focus on driving as much as you can.
Yeah, and the thing that I was going to touch on is when you get your license, right?
Yes.
Like I was the first one to get my license with my friends, right?
So you instantly become the cool kid, right?
Right, and because I was 16 while everybody else was 15 and a half, right?
Right.
And all I remember is the fact of everybody be like, "All right, dude, pick me up. We're all going to the mall."
Right.
Like, listen, pick me up. And it wasn't about the drinking or the drugs or anything like
No.
that, right? Like, not like the distractions that they have today,
Right.
Back then, it was just like, listen, pick us up. We're going to the mall because we can go to the mall now at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yes.
And walk around to the stores, and you just never think about the fact that it's like, okay, I'm going to pick up Bill first, and then I'm going to pick up you, Johnny, and then I'm going to pick up you, Frank, and all of a sudden there's 6 people in the car, and everybody's dancing in the back and all
Having a good time.
and you're like,
you're distracted.
right.
So, and another thing that we talk about, and the kids ask me this question all the time, because I show them the stats, and there's a law out there that when a young adult gets their driver's license at 16 years old, they're not allowed to have any passengers under the age of 18 for the first 6 months.
Oh.
You have to wait 6 months. And again, it's to get more experience, right? And the kids will ask me, "So Officer Habig, how long did you wait?" I go, 0 days. And they look at me and I'm like, "Look, I'm going to be 100% honest." I go, "But you got to remember, I got my driver's license in 1989.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
it was different." And they're like, 19 what? And I'm like, "Okay, we're not going to talk about age right now."
Right.
I'm a little elder. It's okay. We're good, right? I go, "But I got my license, and the next day I was driving my friends." But it's because of the mistakes that we made when we were younger that unfortunately crashes happen and people got hurt and maybe died. So they start to implement these laws. So now you guys have to wait. And I'll be honest, I wish it was a year. I wish these kids would just get more experience before they started putting their friends in their car, because you see kids piling in every single day, at these schools, and I might pull someone over, and I'm like, "You got your license a month ago. Like, you're not supposed to have any of these people in your car."
Yeah.
I said, I tell you what, I'm going to use this as a lesson learned experience. I'm going to give you 2 options. A, you can kick everybody out of your car right now and tell them that they're going to have to walk. Or B, you can keep them in your car and I'll give you a citation for every single individual that you have in the car. And that's a $300 ticket for each one. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's $1,500. And they're like, "You guys got to get out." I'm like, "Yeah, exactly." Right? I'm like, let's use this as a learning experience, right? Let's get more experience behind the wheel of a car. Let's be smarter. Let's be safer. And let's everybody get home and, continue to live our long, fun lives.
Right.
I
want to touch on one more thing.
Yes.
That we talked in the beginning, and I'd like to sort of come back to that on the wrap up here. One of the things that we want parents to understand that are watching this right now, okay, is that if they allow their child to get in a car either that they own, that's on their insurance, or their whatever the situation is, and that child goes out and does whatever it is that they do, and that child has people in their car, and that child lives, and people in their car lose their life, and they're for vehicular manslaughter,
Correct.
or some something like this, which happens, their life is over.
It could very well be, right? We have to look at everything to kind of figure out. But, you know, if that individual does something wrong and does cause the life of somebody else, yes, they're going to be, you know, charged with, you know, the appropriate, you know, crime for that.
Yeah.
But my other big thing is, what if it's not their fault, right? Let's say, for example, your son is, you know, picks up a friend and they're driving down the street, but he doesn't make his friend put on his seatbelt. And they get into a crash and the passenger gets ejected and he dies. I go, now your son has to live with that for the rest of his life, thinking I could have saved his life simply by telling him to put his seatbelt on. So it can still hit home that way too. You know, these are things that we have to live with for the rest of our lives. So why don't we try to make the strongest, best decision, and that's going to keep us the safest, right? So that's what I try to talk to the kids about. And when I talk to the parents, hey, talk to your kids. I had one parent that was like, so should I let my son, because they're allowed to drive with their siblings when they get their license. Should I let my son drive with with his siblings? And I go, well, let me ask you this. I don't drive with your son. How good of a driver is your son? He goes, I don't think he's the greatest. Then I probably wouldn't do it. 100. You know, if you don't think he's the greatest driver, then why are you gonna, you know, put more people in his car and maybe give him more distractions, or give him maybe somebody else that he might hurt? And they're like, that's a good call. Yeah, people don't. They're just like, but I need him to take. Okay, I understand you need it, but if you don't think he's a good driver, you know, then why would you put them in that situation? That's a good point. I'm like that. Like, that's all I'm getting at. Like, because I don't know how he drives. If you think he's a good, safe driver, he's going to do the right things, then sure.
Because there are.
Because there are, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Then go ahead. And, you know, I'll have parents that are like, man, you know, my son is a great driver. My daughter's horrendous. You know, or vice versa.
Right,
you know, it could go either way.
Right.
And I'm like, I get it. Right. So I've got an older child. He's 23 years old, so he's been out on his own. He's been driving for 6-7 years.
Okay.
And when he comes in, you know, if he comes by and he picks up his younger brothers to take him somewhere, I'm like, he's a good driver. I've driven with him. He's a good driver. Go ahead and go. Right. But you know, if some of the friends come over to the house and I'm like, I've seen him driving. You're not getting in his car, you know. And my son's like, I just want it. We're gonna go out, and I'm like, I've seen him drive,
and you're not
getting in his car. So, and then I'll have a little sit down with that young man and be like, look, I'm not your dad, but I've seen you drive, and this is what I would recommend. This, and this, you know. And if you want to take my son anywhere, then you need to figure it out.
But it's important because, like, you're a parent,
right?
And so you know, it's funny because I always tell people, like, in the store, they go, well, you know, how do you talk to your mother? I go, I talk to my mother the same way I'm talking to you.
100%.
Like, you know what I mean? So, like, there's no difference, and so it's very important to be able to have that, to be able to share that,
correct,
and be able to talk to them in the same manner that you would, you know, your own child.
And that's why we always talk. You know, be a parent. Don't try to just be their friend. Right? You got to be able to talk to them and tell them, look, there's times I'm going to say no. It's not because I said so. It's because I need to explain to you the reason why I'm saying no. It's because of reason A, B, and C. Now, if you can figure out how to take care of A, B, and C, then I'll go ahead and let you do it. So.
And that's what's important.
That's what's important, right? Be that parent, be there for them, love them, you know, and because you want them, you know, to be there for the rest of their lives. You do not want to have to bury your child. Unfortunately, I have seen parents that have had to do that, and it is no fun.
And that's the important thing that we have to take away.
Right.
And that's what's so great about your class.
Yes, sir.
So I thank you again for coming on. You know, we have to do everything we can for all the children and the young adults and everything like this. You know what I mean? And so your message, how many kids do you see a year?
So just this past year, we spoke to 15,750 kids.
15,000 kids. So
yes.
Keep the message going. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate very much. we're going to look at this camera now, and then we're going to wave, and we're going to say, see you later, okay? See you later.
See you later.